En el centro de la pampa vive un pimiento. Sol y viento pa' su vida, sol y viento. Sol y viento pa' su vida, sol y viento.
Hello, I'm Patrick Barnard. Welcome to the 124th edition of the Pimento Report. It is September 15th, 2017. There's a meeting tonight of the Friends of Meadowbrook Park. They're going to discuss some very important things for all of Montreal. They're the people who've worked so hard to make the Meadowbrook area a park in the future for all Montrealers. There's a very important judgment that's just been made about Meadowbrook. We're going to hear about that tonight.
Oui, ok. Hey Louise, comment vas-tu? Est-ce que c'est temps? Veux-tu que je commence?
I'm the minister of the church here, and we've been going, I think, for 18 months now with this climate cafe, once a month, and some of you have already presented, and we've had a really rich mixture of events, and tonight promises to be just as good. This is part of a larger part of the church life, this climate cafe. It's not just a one-off thing. So we call it a Faith in Nature Centre, and part of the sanctuary is dedicated to education on nature and environment. We're even advertising for a post right now to animate and teach about nature.
I am an ami du Parc Meadowbrook, and I'm happy to be here tonight with like-minded people. I spend a lot of my time with unlike-minded people. It's nice to be here with like-minded people, people who care a lot about the environment and care about green space here on the island of Montreal. So, Les Amis de Parc Meadowbrook has been fighting for a long time to protect the space and to protect all green space on the island of Montreal. So we're here tonight to hear a presentation about the birds that are on Meadowbrook. We're going to hear about other things related to Meadowbrook. If you're not sure what Meadowbrook is, well, Louise, who is the president of our organization, is going to give you a short description of what Meadowbrook is.
So Les Amis du Parc Meadowbrook was formed 25 years ago to stop the development of a green space that actually few Montrealers know, except if you play golf. It's Meadowbrook Golf Club. It's a 57-acre green space that straddles Côte Saint-Luc and Lachine. So this is the part in Lachine, and this is the part in Côte Saint-Luc. Okay? As you can see, it's completely encircled by railway, and it's even cut by a railway. Also on the grounds is La Petite Rivière Saint-Pierre. La Petite Rivière Saint-Pierre, okay, runs through the grounds. It's one of the few places in Montreal that you can still see it. It was buried in the sewer system back in the 19th century because it was so polluted.
It's still not a park. I mean, it's not going to be developed for the time being, and that's a good thing. That was an important victory for us. But it is still a golf course. It's a golf course that doesn't make much money, and we still believe. We promised when we fought all these years, and all this energy that we put into this, it was to make it a park for all of Montrealers, to really make it a green space with a lot of trees, so that birds and other animals could live there way more than live there now. So we're still going. The petition is on. If you haven't signed the petition, we strongly encourage you to sign the petition. The fight is not won. It's not a park yet, and we're fighting it on many fronts.
We're going to be pushing the petition over the next few months to get as many people in NDG to sign it as possible, and hopefully have a really good ceremony in terms of presenting it to the mayor of the borough and downtown, because we need NDG Côte-Neige to argue that for this park.
With our green spaces in Montreal, any green spaces we have left, we want to try and at least connect them to make it better for not only humans, but the animals, the birds, and everything else, right? So connectivity is the key word.
Thank you for inviting me here. I'm with an organization called Bird Protection Quebec. It is our 100th anniversary this year.
Hey!
Bird Protection Quebec was formed by a group of ladies in Westmount 100 years ago. We used to go out in funny long dresses and funny hats to look at birds. And it's evolved to what it is today, which is not just a bird watching organization, but a conservation organization as well. What we can do for other organizations that are working to try to save green spaces is we can provide information and surveys on the types of birds that are habitating those places that you're trying to save. And there are certain things that you can use to help you with that, particularly if you have certain types of nesting birds or certain types of rare species on properties. That gives you a little bit of an upper hand, although sometimes our federal government seems to want to ignore that sort of thing. We do an event every year called the Montreal Christmas Bird Count. And bird counts are done all over North America, Central America, and the Caribbean between the 15th of December and January 5th. And a lot of people say, well, why do you do them in the winter? There's not as many birds. There's a reason they're done in the winter, because we want to take a snapshot of the birds that are supposed to be here at that point in time. We're not dealing with migrating species that are visiting us for a couple weeks or whatever. These are birds that are native and living in the areas where you're counting them in the month of December. So this is why we do them there. Now, we have about 70 people who go out and have gone out for the last 81 years doing Christmas bird counts. What I've pulled here for you to take a look at is the Montreal West sector. And Section 2 and Section 3 of the circle that we do on the island of Montreal covers Meadowbrook as part of those two sectors. So what we have here is the birds that were seen on the Christmas count of 2016. In the two sections that involve Meadowbrook, we had 918 species in one 918 birds and 2,366 birds in the two sections, made up of 20 species and 28 species. So we'll take the larger number of 28 species that are making use of the Meadowbrook area during the month of December. So generally speaking, if you take that number and expand it into the spring and summer and fall, the migration periods, you may probably triple that number on a green space like Meadowbrook.
Just to address the thing about it taking 26 years to get the political job done, it was an extraordinary amount of work. It's an unbelievable amount of work. If you were to take the man hours, woman hours, children hours that it took for each hectare that was saved, you would get a ridiculous ratio. One of the lessons learned, I think, from Meadowbrook is that never giving up works. The other lesson to learn from Meadowbrook is we need to find more and different ways so that we don't get exhausted by the politicians who like nothing better than to have commissions and studies and consultations, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that really do exhaust people. For Meadowbrook, we had the OCPM gave a favorable recommendation for preserving Meadowbrook after public hearings twice. The LeBrecq Commission, the agglomeration, recommended the saving of Meadowbrook once. Endless hearings whose reports came out in favor of saving Meadowbrook that were ignored by the politicians. So one of the very good reasons to take legal action is not to replace the political efforts of volunteers and everything they can do, but to work with them. In some cases to create a bit of noise, in other cases to frighten the politicians a little bit, and just generally create a bow wave that keeps things in the news. And I think that we don't have to win too many of them before we change the landscape. Another observation I would make is that the laws are there, the laws are great, but no one seems to be or I shouldn't say no one, but generally speaking, the political class is too closely allied with moneyed class, and they have no interest in enforcing their own rules. And So it falls to the public and public interest groups, such as this one, to hold their feet to the fire and force them to enforce their own laws. You'll constantly hear politicians say, oh no, we have to give them the permit to build or they'll sue us. They'll say that it's expropriation, it's not fair, they bought this land. Heck with that. Okay? The real reason why they are saying they have to get it done is because they have friends. I'm sorry to be very cynical about it, and I know that surprises you and disappoints you, but but it is very, very true. It's a very unfortunate thing. Anyway, sorry for that. There are one, two,
Don't
three.
be sorry, we want the truth.
Okay.
We can handle it.
I'm sure he knows everything, I'm sure Clayton's told him everything. The problem is
As I thought, I thought I was going to enjoy an evening with like-minded people, and it came true. I did enjoy spending an evening with like-minded people.
Campbell Stewart, I'd like to ask you a question which directly involves les Amis du Parc Meadowbrook. It's this judgment in a superior court, Meadowbrook Group Pacific against the City of Montreal, and the judge finds very categorically against the developer. What is the importance of this case?
Well, I think there's several reasons why this is very important. First thing is that this is a growing trend with judges to recognize that the municipalities have the right in law to protect green spaces for environmental reasons, valid environmental reasons, and they have full power to do that. And they can do that without the developer or the land speculator having the right to simply come back and say, well, give me, $50–100 million because I'm frustrated in my plans. So this is extraordinarily important. It follows on a very similar decision that was rendered in the Angel Woods case, where the developer took the city of Beaconsfield to court over very similar things. And again, in that case, it was found, just as in this case, that the city was acting well within its powers. It was acting in good faith. It had the power to preserve, and that the developer did not have the right to get big bucks out of the city or get expropriated.
Now, there's been about 3 cases recently involving areas in Montreal, and all of them seem to increase the principle that municipalities have really a right to regulate space, and they also seem to be giving more credence to the idea that people have a right to the environment and that municipalities have a right to look at the environment on behalf of their citizens. Is that correct? Is that what's happening?
Absolutely right, and the subtext here is that it's becoming clearer and clearer, and I hope to our municipal politicians that they are the voice of the citizens, and the citizens have the right, and if the municipality acts appropriately in the interest of its citizens and not in the interest of developers, that the law will back them up. It's extraordinarily important. It's also important because there's 2 other cases in court now, which is, one is a complaint by a developer against the city of Sainte-Anne-de-Bellevue, basically saying the same thing, that the new development plan should not apply to them because they had bought this land and they should be allowed to make big money on it. That's coming up, and this case with the Meadowbrook and the Angel Woods one are very good news for the defense in that the municipality of Sainte-Anne-de-Bellevue has every right in the world to act to save its green space. The same developer that just lost before the Superior Court against the City of Montreal over Meadowbrook is also suing the City of Côte-Saint-Luc over the northern portion of Meadowbrook, where they are looking for many millions of dollars because they didn't like the rezoning up there either.
Are we seeing something like a slight sea change here, a shift maybe in the predominant winds, if I can put it that way?
Wouldn't that be nice?
Thank you.
We're working very hard to make sure that that is what happens.
Thanks a lot.
Okay.
And if you had a good time tonight and you are an environmentalist, we have an information table at the back. So we have our Twitter, we have our newsletter, we have our meetings of Meadowbrook. The groups are mentioned there. There are a lot of different issues on the island of Montreal that you can get involved in, and we would love to see you at meetings of Meadowbrook or for the other issues too. Thank you very much, Neil. Thank you very much, church. Thank you.
En el centro de la pampa vive un pimiento. Sol y viento pa' su vida, sol y viento, sol y viento pa' su vida.